It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Jeff Cordulack, Executive Director of the Connecticut chapter of the Northeast Organic Farming Association, a nonprofit organization of more than 5,000 farmers, gardeners, landscape professionals, and consumers in 7 states. The association's primary goal is to educate its members and consumers about organic farming principles and techniques, thereby ensuring the growth of organic agriculture, organic food, and proper land care. As part of its mission, the Connecticut chapter also runs an organic land care program to train the next generation of landscapers, land managers, and conservationists. Jeff, who by the way was raised here in Darien, is interested in wildlife conservation, watershed protection, organic farming, and sustainable living. He joined the association in 2015 after working for 10 years with the National Audubon Society in Greenwich. Prior to that, he worked for Sound Waters in Stamford and has collaborated with many conservation organizations over the last 2 decades. In 2013, he was a recipient of the Paul Keogh Award, which was presented by the Northeast Water Environmental Association in recognition of his communications leadership to increase public awareness and personal actions to protect water quality. Jeff went out west to earn his BS degree in Natural Resources Management and Conservation from Colorado State University. His presentation will enlighten us all about the environmental benefits of regenerative agriculture globally, as well as show what's being done locally through sound farming practices that ultimately contribute to healthy diets. Whether that includes genetically modified foods or not, we'll just have to find out. The platform is yours, Jeff.
Thank you kindly. I understand I should use the mic. Can move it? Great. I'm in good hands with the technology. Thank you for having me today. Again, my name is Jeff Cordulack, and I am quite pleased to be with you. Yes, I grew up in Darien. In fact, my whole life, really. I was born in Hartford, and after a year, we moved down here. Anybody recognize Beach Drive? Hey, tennis courts at the top of the street there. It was my stomping ground. Walked to Hindley. Enjoyed Hindley School. It was great. One of the special parts about the Hindley School of that era was the farmyard that was along the road there. And it was transformational for all the 6th graders that got to be in charge and all the youngsters that got to visit it with the 6th graders' permission. And it was like the best after-school club going. So besides the Rocket Club. You guys remember those model rockets? I still have those. I got one for my son. Yes, like Martin kindly said, I have been to school over in Colorado. Fort Collins is where Colorado State University's School of Forestry is. They're very good at environmental topics, and also timber and cattle and just about everything you need from the natural resources. I was lucky. I was able to study in school for 3 months down in Belize. But to get to Belize, I had to drive there first. We studied the whole way and spent 3 months in Belize, a bit in Guatemala, learning about recreation resources, which is tourism, and then natural resources and how they interact, and is ecotourism possible? Well, when I came back, I was sure that we certainly needed one thing. We needed to do a lot more science because we weren't following along. We didn't know exactly what was eco-friendly or not. It's just not, it's not something not right about flying Budweiser in to Belize to serve to us when we visit, right? but it would happen unless we were thinking and supporting the idea of something else, like they're local. I was lucky to go internationally to Belize in my studies and after school. My gosh, I didn't even know, but my roommate was from Botswana, Africa. He had a 20,000 hectare game preserve back home. He invited me for about a year to teach the children of Botswana, to really share environmental education ideas, protect everything, because you never know what you might need genetically or whatever. There was just so much I learned in those early years. All of that came crashing to an end when I came back to dear old mom. Wanted to be around her. She needed me, and I wanted to be back here, and I've been back here since then, 1997. And I guess it's a good thing. Otherwise, I would have been in some other part of the world. I wouldn't have been in Connecticut doing conservation. But I have been, and I am here, and I'm proud to be back in Darien telling you about Connecticut NOFA and the really great things that happen in Connecticut. I invite you to think of questions for me, clarifications. Many of you might be wondering about some topics. Please go for it. I could tell you're all well informed, and you might be reading the Times, or you might be reading some other magazines that are talking about all sorts of things related to organic foods, whether or not it's good or bad, genetically modified foods, genetic editing. Go for it. Ask me whatever you'd like to know. You can interrupt me. But to get started, I'll tell you a bit about Connecticut NOFA, a place I'm excited to be a part of. It's very special. In fact, I just see Mr. and Mrs. Fred Smith here. They said to me when I came in that they were early charter members of Connecticut NOFA, way back with Bill Dusing. And they were happy to hear Bill Dusing is still with us, working and having fun, actually. So, thank you. Our mission is really about agriculture, food, and land care. And kind of land care for us is like landscaping, all the gardens and the lawns. Before Connecticut NOFA, there was not a lot of guidance for those landscapers, and I'll explain a little more. But we want to grow organic farming, and we want to make more organic food available, and we want to get more organic landscapers online, making nice, lush lawns for you. And so that's what we are aiming for, and it's a big goal, but we've done so much. We've set so many great programs up, and I'll explain, like our food guide and our conferences and things like that. This is a farm in Connecticut, a nice misty day here in Ridgefield. If you want to go up there this summer, it's called the Hickories. They sell great products there, right out of their farm stand. So the Hickories is there. They have sheep and things. It's a great spot. This is the farmer. She was, some sort of smart business type, and she just quit it and decided to farm in Ridgefield, and she's now really quite a rock and roll farmer. She's had me there with groups, and we had 55 people come out to her little barn to listen to me actually talk a little bit about this. Yes, sir?
You asked to interrupt you. I just want to let everybody know that Sunil's wife works there.
Hey!
Yes, it has for years.
Sunil. And Sunil is?
Sunil Saxena. His wife is Deepa.
Excellent, excellent. Wonderful. It's a great farm. It's a very good example of a farm doing its best to produce reasonably and be as organic as possible. It's really not that difficult to be organic. It's just different methods and learning processes, products. Sometimes it's usually practices and inputs. The basis of organic is rooted in using what's around you. So we were mentioning the organic lawn program in the introduction. I want to just briefly touch on it here, that it's unique. It's recognized internationally. We've had over 2,000 professionals take the course, and we have 500 of them that maintain credentials with us. That's all done through a program that we call the NOFA Organic Land Care Program. So we're training the landscapers, and we have a website, and we have paper documents too that guide people to how to find them. So you can just go online. We put it in Darien, and I'll show you 20 or 30 different companies that have employees who are current credentialed folks with us. They are accredited. It's very special. It's I mean, people come from all over. We're running the course, the February course is going on now, and it only happens a few times a year. There's people there from North Carolina. The other day, somebody from Wisconsin was calling to make sure their renewal got in time. Texas, they traveled just to learn this because it's so unique. And where did it come from? It's amazing, but it came from the organic farmers at Connecticut NOFA and Mass NOFA and New York NOFA and a bunch of other experts that those farmers found to write the guidebook on how to be an organic landscaper, how to do grass better, how to do gardening without, I grew up with Miracle-Gro, but how to do it without Miracle-Gro. And how to do it with the rose dust that is not really like, warning, do not inhale rose dust. You know how that can be, right? You've had to clear out those shelves of those things your wife brings home, right? Those poisons, or does she send you out for the poisons? Well, there's a lot of lawns, and that's why we do it. In Connecticut, there's about 14,000 acres of farms. In Connecticut, there's about 200,000 acres of lawn. There's a lot. It's like, I don't know, I think it says something like 1% of the US or so. It's quite shocking. Here's our area. The green is just the lawn habitat. Lawn habitat. It's pretty cool, huh? It's good for, I don't know, robins. Lawns aren't bad, but a little less lawn is better. And I have an example of an organic lawn at my place, and I know dozens of pros who know how to do it for athletic fields that are highly used. If you ever hear of your grandchildren's schools or whatever going to this synthetic turf field, synthetic fake rubber, that is such a hogwash product, I just have to say, I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to be cheeky, I've spent over 15 years studying it. It's a poor investment. It's also concerning from a health standard. It's also not good on concussions. It doesn't absorb water. It goes on and on. It's just not a good investment. You want to have good grass that's highly used, you can have it. So don't believe you need to have the fake field for high playtime. If you don't believe me, I've got a couple thousand experts who could back it up, and 500 of them who would show up and take care of it. And it's all because we all love the sound. You guys remember the fish kills? Do you guys mind if I ask you, who's lived here since the 1970s? In Darien. Wow. Great. Who's a little newer than that? All right, a little newer. Okay, good. Well, we had fish kills, we had droughts, we had gas shortages, and the fish kills were the stinkiest. And the gas shortages, I remember waiting on the post road in line. It's very important for people to follow the standards so that the chemicals don't run off into the water, into the little creek near you, which then goes down. All of that is based on the principles of organic agriculture. And that's where I'll start to talk about agriculture as it relates. So with organic land care and those landscapers and the grass in mind, and how do you do the grass? Do you have any brief questions for me about lawns or how that's all coming together? Nice, good. Yes, sir.
I was on the board of a club on Long Island that had 36 pristine grass tennis courts. And it killed me when I thought about how we kept them that way. Is this organic land care capable of making sure that the greens on a golf course are as pristine as they are without using all these toxic chemicals?
I don't want to seem like a know-it-all, but we're seeing lots and lots of organic golf courses. Martha's Vineyard, out on the tip of Long Island, you name it, we could find you an example that's in the right climate. It's doable organically, you just got to be willing and knowledgeable. Really, it's doable. Organic grass courts for tennis, that's talk about high use. You'd have to be very intensively managing it, but I'll tell you one of the biggest tricks. If you have poor drainage, you have a tough time with lawns. So when they set up those courts, the first thing they do is plan the drainage. Then they plan everything else. So if you have bad lawns and they're complaining, you might ask them to look at the drainage issues first before going to a fake field. You had a quick question, and so did you, sir?
My first question is going to be about golf courses, which you already answered.
Okay.
equation different in the Southwest. I went back to California, where I grew up, Southern California, and in a lot of places, people are tearing out their lawns and putting in drought-resistant escaping instead.
Indeed. Does this translate to the Southwest? Is that kind of your question, or how does it compare there?
I think natural lawns are not such a benign way to landscape your yard.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand, when we wrote these standards, half of our thinking was, how are we going to have a little less lawn out there in the mentality? But we know we all will have a patch of grass. It's just how big, right? In the Southwest, the experts are different, but the concepts are the same. You need to incorporate a lot of organic material. You need to understand your nutrients and do other things, basic chemistry. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, about high school football fields.
Right, athletic turf, they're on it all the time.
Okay, we've got them around here, and they're starting to go to artificial turf. What's the cost differential over 10 years between organic and artificial turf, which gets replaced every decade?
Well, that's, the question is, you know, with the synthetic turf fields, you know, what's the cost difference over, you know, long, 10 years or 20 years and whatnot? And because there is this knowledge generally that after 10 years, you've got to do another big investment in that field and replace that. Well, for starters, whatever investment you put into your fake field and whatever investment you put into your grass field, equal, whatever it is, but in 10 years, you'll be reinvesting. On the real grass, you don't have to tear it up. In fact, over time, by 10 years, what happens is it's all tied to the biology, and I'll point to that in our slides. If you get the biology in the soil going, it takes care of the grass in a very good way. It maintains adequate aeration on its own. It shares nutrients on its own through the fungal networks. And I'll go into some more detail. But I would be able to point you to Chip Osborne from Osborne Organics as an expert who goes to towns like Darien, Marblehead, Mass, Denver, all over the country. I can barely get him on my speaking docket, which I do have today. He's in Norwich. He will show you it's cheaper to go with grass. You could do it on a very highly used field. You just have to do it properly. I often see fields that have gotten no investment. And then they come in and they say, that's a terrible field, let's just make it fake, you know. It's only a couple $1 million. Yes, sir?
I have one question. Part of the thing about the pristine lawns is the aesthetic value of them.
Oh, we could do that. Pretty lawns?
Sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
the organic, we sort of have to allow the buttercups and the dandelions and so forth to grow, which is fine with me.
Not always,
We're doing
yeah.
a church thing.
Yeah.
So we get a combination, slowly
That's very
changing
nice.
over to more organic as people got more used to not having the pristine lawn.
That's excellent, the way
And
that,
that also compromised, equated the cost a little bit, brought the cost down a little bit, and also satisfied both sides of the pew.
I think you've gone through a lot looking at the matter, and I hope you've learned a lot from it, and it was a good project. When you look at transitioning your grass from, you know, let's just call it a highly chemical approach, something with, you know, 4 bags a year, growth control, weed and feed, all of these things going on. Yeah, that's a chemical lawn, and versus an organic lawn, where depending on how you cut it, you can crowd out the right weeds. If you raise the mower, if you have higher grass blades, it outcompetes. There's all these ways. So the guys that I see doing lawns, they have to just ask you, what's your expectations? If you want a perfect lawn, they can do it. It's going to take a lot more focus, and they're going to have to get taller blades for some years, and they're going to have to put in more seed to make sure it's highly densely packed with just seed and outcompete for a year or two. But you'll get a perfect lawn. Or you could just have a very, very good lawn with a few things in between. In fact, Scott's in the old days, look at their seed mix. It was like in the 1920s or 30s, it had grass seed mixed with clover. because they knew the clover fed the lawn automatically. In about 1940, 45, they removed the clover and they started selling nitrogen, which was the byproduct of bomb-making factories, which were no longer needed. In fact, the bomb-making factories that we all depended on were quickly converted over to the chemical factories that you know now. They produce fertilizer and bombs equally quickly. They're readily flippable. Right now, they could just be flipped bombs. And so that's what happened after World War II. We had lots of factories that could use, so that's where we got synthetic things. We'll just keep going. Is that okay? We'll keep going. Yes, yes, sir.
In the spring, you go to, let's say, Home Depot.
Yes.
They sell tons of Scott's turf builder,
Yes.
which is chemical, I believe.
To synthetic material, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And they sell that like you wouldn't believe it. Now, what is the organic alternative to Scott's turf builder?
There are two things. Somebody said process, and it's how you do it. So you're going to start doing things like mowing your clippings in, mowing your leaves in. That's going to feed it for you over time. If you're looking for a quick shot of nutrition, there's some other products out there that are OMRI certified. They're O-M-R-I, and it's organic certified type of stuff. It says organic, and we're looking at manures of different types, chicken manures and different products, and fishes and whatnot. We have many approaches in the lawn industry now. There's liquids that we come out and spray. There's special slice seeders. There's all sorts of things. You don't really need like a turf builder fertilizer. The first thing that somebody would do when they're wondering about nutrition is to send out a soil test, and then it will say add a little calcium, or it will show you maybe your pH is just off. If your pH is off, you might know already. You just don't have available nutrient. It might be there, but the pH is preventing it. So if your pH is good, then start wondering what's wrong. If your pH is off, start there. And there's two types of lime, calcitic and dolomitic. But let me go into agriculture. Is that fair? Fair enough? All right. So we're based on basically trying to keep things healthy. And, the fairness is about the farmers and fair to the people. Ecology is a respect and working with the nature and the care for the land so it's there for future generations. And that's kind of, what I say in these slides, healthy planet, okay? That's the goal. And respect and justice for everything living. There are incredible natural systems. They've been around for millions of years, and we just need to get involved with them and not disrupt them too much, and we can take advantage of them. There are many generations to come, and worldwide we have a lack of things going on in the soil, like a lack of carbon in the soil. Worldwide, 50 to 80% of the soil. Worldwide, agricultural soils are deficient in soil carbon. They tend to be at least 50 to 80% deficient in soil carbon. And that is often just how we treated it. We might have tilled it a little much or something, or not fed it enough. And I'll mention some of that. See, this is a gorgeous vineyard. I'd like to be here right now, actually up on the hill in the tasting room. I'd like to be up there. And this is quite good. I did notice, though, this is lines going down, so that's not good. I'd probably put contours, so the grapes would be going this way. That's a good start. That's a more organic approach, just thinking about your land. But this is how organic vineyards look. That's an organic vineyard. It's got things planted in between the rows. It's not dry. It's not bare soil. And the whole message of today is about soil carbon, and bare soil is the first sign of trouble. We're going to end up with farms that have covered soil, things living on it almost all year long. That's the difference. That's how you drop the bag of stuff in the hardware store by that company, and you pick up on all the Mother Nature's free benefits. It's pretty interesting. It's like a science trick. People like Patrick up in Washington, Connecticut know about it. He's got cover crops on some of those things. funny thing is, Patrick goes along with his cover crops and he tills them under. And that's normal for organic farmers, but I know others who have a new way. They roll them. Very interesting stuff. So there's a way to treat organic farms even better too. It's not all just chemical. And the difference between chemical and organic, it's about materials that are synthetically made and materials that are made by nature and recognized by nature. He has young Connecticut kids working there. He supplies farmers markets in Connecticut, New York, and this is just one other farm. It's called Walding Field Farm. I think it's one among the larger vegetable farms in Connecticut. And I hope someday he gets a roller crimper, so he rolls his cover crops, and they're going to be planting into basically a mat of grass that has had a line ripped through it, just big enough to put in their crops. So there's always neat ways to do it, and we're always trying to do things that promote the cycling. There's so much going on. I have several of these descriptions, but if you're wondering about the nutrients in the bag at the hardware store, that nutrient that you seek is actually created by these things. And that is created only if you let it happen, let it flourish, don't poison it, and let the grass do its thing. Because the grass is feeding it, and I'll show you how. Or the plants of all kind are feeding it. In fact, there's a lot of life in the soil. They think there's 95% of the world's species are species in the soil. That's a lot of numbers. They're not very big, but there's a lot of them. In fact, on this, 95%, so how much of the weight of the world is microbial life, like soil life? Like that life is found in rock. They found out, they went deep into rock and they found microbes, water, soil. It's about half the weight of the whole earth is microbial life. That's what they estimate. And we're just beginning to understand it. This is Elaine Ingram. She was one of the earlier pioneers starting to look at the biology in the soil. She was around here. She helped contribute to the development of our standards for the land care and our understanding of soil biology. It's hard to believe, but did you know that in a spoon, you're looking at 6 feet of fungal strands? 100 million, a billion bacteria. There's just an amazing number of things. How about little worms, nematodes? 10 or 20 worms in that spoon. And there's good nematodes and there's bad nematodes. And if you want to take care of your grubs, you have a grub problem, supposedly. They call it a grub problem because animals dig your lawn up. Well, help the good nematodes thrive because they will infect the grubs. The bad nematodes do other bad things. So there's lots of life in the soil to care for and to learn about. In fact, in an acre, in the top 6 inches, that's the amount of pounds. There's 60,000 pounds of carbon, 6,000 of just nitrogen. This is organic nitrogen, phosphorus, and this is 1,000 pounds of microbes in 6 inches of soil over an acre. 1,000 pounds of microbes. A microbe is really defined as something that you can't see. It's just that small. So a little worm that you can see, that's not exactly a microbe. It's pretty dramatic. All of this is connected, and when we were developing our nutrients and our DDTs, we weren't understanding this cycle very well. Not until the 1980s did we really start studying the life of the soil, and the help of DNA testing really helped. Because you could run a DNA test and find dozens of different DNAs from soil creatures. You know? Does that make sense? This is like a little mite on the leaf surface. This is a sow bug. You've seen those walking around, those little isopods. And those are big. This, I love these. It's called a woolly bear. It's like the world's toughest creature. Have you heard of this? The water, oh, I'm sorry, not the woolly, the water bear. Anyways, it could be desiccated, sent to space, rehydrated, and come back to life. It's a real survivor, and it's microscopic. And there's protozoas in there, and those are bacteria. And bacteria, well, you might think they're bad. You might wash with antibacterial soap. I highly recommend not buying any more antibacterial soap. Just use soap and water in your house. If you're in the medical field, that's a little different. But I'd be happy to take a question on why. But the bacteria are very important in soil, and they so are on our skin. Don't kill them with antibacterial stuff, because the bad ones will flourish. Yes, sir?
So when you go into a supermarket now, they have a dispenser of these little things, like tissues, that are liquid, that's supposed to keep your hands clean.
There is an alcohol-based antibacterial thing that's different from the other antibacterial soap ingredients like triclosan, which the FDA just banned 19 of them from soaps, like last fall. So it's not a good thing. Just use real soap and water. It's just as effective, and it was scientifically proven. If you remember one thing today, stop using antibacterial hand soaps. Your wife will be upset for only a day or two.
With regard to your soil conditioning and the web, I've been reading about a very exciting new conditioner called biochar.
Oh yes, biochar is kind of like charcoal.
They have not found out, quantified it yet, but it looks like it can be liquid, it can be gas, it can be different forms, it can do different things. It's an exciting new change.
It is exciting, biochar. Yeah, they're talking about in the old Middle East,
Amazon.
the Amazon, in the Americas, they found that there was an incorporation of charcoal material into the farming, and got them thinking. Turns out, if you add charcoal type material into your farm, into your growing medium, it becomes a very good reservoir for moisture, the microbes, it holds the nutrients, it adds surface area. It's very interesting. We can put carbon into the ground by putting charcoal, and that's one way. And then there's another way I'll talk about carbon going into the ground through the plants. That's the key. See, the plants make sugars, which are made mostly of carbon. And they put them in the ground as carbon. Similar to the biochar being put in, we want carbon in there. Well, you'll see. Bacteria actually control plant disease and promote growth. In your gut, you have bacteria. They help create hormones for you. And you absorb them and use them somehow. The biology of your gut and the biology of the soil is very intertwined with the health of the plant and the person. So it's a quite interesting field. And the fungus have so much to do. They connect everything in the soil. If we were to till the soil, I remember my rototiller. We've got our rototillers, we got our good shovels. Well, it turns out a little less tilling will have a result of having a little more fungal networks, and they do a lot. They move water, they move nutrients, and they do wonders for communication. There's communication amongst plants. And they're sharing amongst things in the forest. One quick study I read recently, they took radioactive gas, a carbon dioxide, they put it in a bag surrounding a plant in a forest, and they found it in trees not too long later, within a day later, across the forest. That same radioactive thing, they found it with a Geiger counter. So that was a very rapid sharing, and it's very complex. They also found, like, the mother trees take care of everything, but it seems they might actually be shunting a little extra nutrients towards their own saplings, to their own siblings. Just crazy things are coming out of this. So it's all deep new science. But, the fungi are an important network, and that's why we talk about not tilling so much. We won't get into that, but it's the tips of those funguses that secrete enzymes, and they really help the plant in so many ways. We call it the tip of the fungus, the roots, we call them it's the rhizosphere. It's just the 5 millimeters from the fungal tip and out. There's all sorts of life and activity there in the rhizosphere. It's where we trade carbon too. carbon in the form of sugar. So there's lots happening there, and almost 80% of plants have known mycorrhizal partners. That means 80% of plants hang around other funguses, and they benefit from each other. Without those funguses, they wouldn't be in the same shape or vigor or health or anything. They just can't do it. You could sterilize the soil, put the plant in, have no funguses, test them, see what happens. With the fungus, it's dramatically different. It helps in all those ways. Oh, look at this. 1 cubic foot of soil could have 320 miles of mycorrhizal fungal hyphae. It's just hard to believe. And so it's a very complex food web indeed. It's all connected, and we didn't know that. So you can look into what everything does, and that's a chart of what the functions are. But I thought it was very enlightening when I started to learn about that. But I knew that for 20 years. But a year and a half ago, I got happy all of a sudden. Well, what's that, the mute? Okay, excuse me. I got happy all of a sudden. I mean, a couple years ago I was bummed out. I was not happy. I was an unhappy Darien boy. That's not good. Sure enough, there are troubles in the world. You know, there's like problems with too much grazing in some places, or I should call it improper grazing, because there's good grazing and less good. There's problems with dryness in the world, with drought. There's problems with water, just for drinking, let alone for ample farming or good enough farmland. There's a lot going on. We think it has everything to do with the climate. Well, how can we fix this? See, I said it, I got happy a year and a half ago. It's because I realized there's a solution. And the solution is here. It's in this soil. Organically treated soil can reabsorb the problem. The problem is carbon dioxide. The plants will do the job for us. And they're going to put it in the soil in the form of sugars, where it feeds the microbiology, because the biology is going to feed the plant back. And over time, more carbon will be in the ground, less will be in the air. Let me try to explain how. The greenhouse effect, you know what it is, I hope. It's getting a little warmer, heat gets trapped. Don't worry about how it happens, it's happening in everybody's scientific opinion. The weather's changing, we've had 3 of the hottest years forever. When you have more heat in the atmosphere, the net gain of heat causes just more storm power. So that's why we get bigger storms. That's the problem. You might not get warming in an area, you might get cooling, but you'll have stronger storms. That's the problem. We were at 280 parts per million carbon dioxide in the air a long time ago, pre-industrial. We're at 400 now, parts per million of carbon dioxide. And there's not a lot of known solutions except for one, and it's organic. It's organic soil. A lot of this has to do with humans. It's going to cause problems if we don't fix climate change. I mean, it's really going to cause problems. It's already causing challenges with farming, other things going on. You see, your insurance maps changed. I hope you didn't live on the water, because your insurance rates, everything, flood zones have changed. That's not because it's not happening. Sorry. It can be fixed over like thousands of years, but we don't have that much time. It's really quite important, and we're like, oh my gosh, what can we do? How can we get the carbon back in the soil? I started to mention the concept of putting carbon dioxide into the plants and making sugars and stashing it underground as stored carbon is like, you know, that sounds a little bit like fantasy, right? I mean, how long is that going to take? How much plant life has to live, and how much carbon has to go underground? How much is used by the animals underground, and how much is re-released by them but not used? And it's a complicated thing. Good thing, before I started my job, they had already written the paper on it. So all the math is actually done by experts around the world. We happen to have one expert who summarized a lot of papers. And they said, well, all right, Folks, if we give you an organic world, how will you fix the world with this carbon idea? Well, I just explained. How long will it take? They said if you take a world and you manage the soil that we have now organically instead of with synthetic materials, it would be about 8 billion acres of range land for animals and almost 4 billion acres of farming land. All that added up, the power of the soil to reabsorb it, it would take 5 years of worldwide organic agriculture to reabsorb enough carbon dioxide to reverse climate change to pre-industrial levels. Maybe they got a digit off. Let's make it 10 years. I think 5 or 10 years of farming organically in the world would be a good shot, a good idea. And it's actually growing. Farming is taking off in organics. You know, the market's growing like 10, 15% a year for decades. It's the one food market that is growing, the organic market. There's actually a future. There's about 40,000 organic farms in the world, 41,000, and 31,000 of them are in the US. The rate of new organic farms is going up around 12%, at least it did in 2014 to 15. And so I'm just going to say then, how can you help get carbon in the soil with organic farming? It's just start trying to buy a little more local, like maybe 1 out of 10 things. If you buy a little more locally, and they happen to be organic, that'd be really great. If you buy locally and they're not organic, it's still really great, because local farmers are our neighbors, and there's not pollution when you're trying to transport that food, and you build a relationship with those people. So I'd like to remind you that every time you buy an organic product or shop locally, you're contributing to putting sugar under the ground and taking the carbon dioxide out of the air. So shopping organically, not so bad. Shopping locally, well, how do you do it? Connecticut NOFA is your answer. We do have this on our website, and we print it every year. We mail it to our members. We're mailing in the newest one out in March, but I have some with me today. It's a county-by-county listing, so just look in your county. Don't forget to look at the county next to your county, though, because there's usually some good farms hiding next door. But there's a map, and it shows every farm. It shows if they're organic, or if they've taken the NOFA promise. It's called the NOFA Farmers Pledge to be organic-like, or if they're just other farm. There's also restaurants in here. There's dry cleaners types of things, organic dry cleaners versus the dry cleaners that are still using perk. Isn't it perk in the dry cleaners? I mean, come on, we figured out a long time ago that's not so good. You could just use, I think it's carbon dioxide instead, liquefied. So there's really neat solutions out there. That was my main point. Don't tell me I put down a filler here. So we're going to get the carbon into the soil through that process. And I don't want to drive it too far, but there's all sorts of research that has been done. And we're calling this regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture knows that tilling can lessen the carbon, so if you do it, you better make up for it. And regenerative agriculture knows that you better keep track of your carbon over time, because your soils will get depleted. So we keep track of where do we lose it when we farm. And we figure out how do we keep it in the ground. And one of the ways is a cover crop. And I don't know, I mean, has everybody got the idea of a cover crop? Think of your farm in the fall. It gets harvested. That's when a cover crop comes in. You throw down something that starts to grow in the fall, is there in the winter, starts growing in the spring. And then in the spring, you come in and you mow it down and plant into it. Or roll it down and plant into it. A cover crop keeps life on the soil, constantly feeding sugars and everything in there. It's revolutionary in a way to think about cover crops for many farmers. And for a small investment per acre, maybe $15 or even $40 if you get complicated, you can get a cover crop on there. It will maintain your life, it will improve the fertility, it will reduce the runoff. Everybody knows this, even the USDA knows this. They have the Natural Resources, and NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. The Dust Bowl, they were founded after the Dust Bowl. They were called the Soil Conservation Service. Now they're the NRCS. So we know how to farm, and we know how much carbon we should have in our soil. Different parts of the country, like this gentleman was asking down in the Southwest, you're starting with less to begin with, but that's okay. The plants that are there are adapted to a lower level of carbon. Here we have about this much, but if you go to a soil and it's low, you need to do some practices. The new regenerative farming practices. They happen to be organic, but we're going to call them regenerative practices, okay? Because they're regenerating the soil. And it's all about that carbon, and I'll just, I'm watching my clock. I remember he told me I could speak for an hour and 15 minutes, and I don't know if you guys want all of that, but I'll speak for as long as you'd like me to. But, water, it's just hydrogen and an oxygen, 2 hydrogens. Why is carbon important? It's very sticky. It likes to stick to things, so it attracts stuff. Like, carbon dioxide, kind of cool. And methane is just a bunch of hydrogen stuck to a carbon. That's cool. So ethane. Now, here's sugar in plants. Whether it's fructose, glucose, sucrose, it's all sugar. And usually it's like C6, H12, O6. 6 C's, 12 hydrogens, 6 oxygens. Anyways, the carbon is elemental to just about everything, so if you're low on it, it's not a good thing. Plants make it out of the air, and when I told you that plants make sugar in their leaves, I'm not joking. It's a measurable amount of 22,000 pounds of sugar per acre per year when you're growing wheat. 22,000 pounds of sugar? That's a lot of sugar. And about 40% of it's going down underground, donated to the soil microbes. What we did, sorry?
Interesting.
It is interesting, right? It's very interesting. It's called root exudates. They're donating sugars underground, and they are helping those microbes thrive, and they live and thrive and poop, and the plants really like that. In fact, the plant is smart enough. If it needs certain nutrients, it manufactures enzymes and sends them down so that the creatures know that that's missing. Somehow it all works. It's deeper science than I can even comprehend, but it's a complex communication network. They even know when danger is coming. They know when disease is coming, and they shunt nutrients to those that are diseased to help them. I can't wait for more studies into like the plant, I guess, behavior almost. But this sugar, all coming out of that wheat field, this is actually carbon sugar, leaving a plant going into the soil. So there's a close-up view of what it is, just like an exudate, oozing. The carbon, the sugar in the soil, it attracts all the life. And the life thrives, and it does very well. This is just saying, so, now we have a healthy plant, it's photosynthesizing, it's trading services with microbes, and it's building soil carbon. It's a really good thing. And it's not just sugars, there's other things, like amino acids, and it's phenolics, and many other things come out of the process of life in the soil. And it all contributes to, I'd say, a much more healthy product. You could see in this chart that over time, the nutrient levels in things like apples, this is showing a decline in nutrient levels from 1914 to 1963 to 1992. They're saying that compared to 1914, there's 48% less calcium, 84% less phosphorus, 96% less iron, 1% less potassium, and 82% less magnesium in the apples that we eat.
genetics of the apple, or is that the farming technique?
They, I believe, have been looking at similar strains over time. So,
There was an article in the Times about a week ago about the actual genetics of tomatoes. It's different.
didn't see that one, I'm sorry, I should look that up. But, you know, I think they tried to eliminate things. They didn't try to make snake oil or sell you a false story. They're just saying that, you know, in soil that's been fumigated and tilled regularly and not fed natural things back, you tend to have less nutrients to work with. And the plants absorb less, and it can translate into less quality food. In Japan, the wholesale shoppers have a spectrometer, the same thing they used to look at your urine, gentlemen. That can tell you how rich the sap of that plant is. So they'll squeeze the spinach, and the spinach should be about this dark to this dark. If it's lower, it's nutrient poor. If it's higher, it's very rich. It's called a Brix test, and it's a new modern way of us to test quality on the fly. And they're doing it already as they shop in Japan. So, you know, I guess that would be the very astute picky shoppers, but we can manage in many different ways that can improve the soil. So I mentioned the cover cropping, and I mentioned less tillage. It makes a big difference. If we have cover crops and less tilling, and we do a special kind of grazing called mob grazing, and we retain manures and things on the site, and we have high biomass rotations. We won't explain, but you end up holding more water, having more life, a better structure, and all of the good stuff. And it ends up with less pollutants, less dust, less sediment, less disease, and better resistance. It sounds like a win. And all of this is from managing this organic matter going into the soil, all those benefits. Let me show you an example. Same site, two different treatments. Soil that's treated to gather more carbon can hold more water. If you increase the land's percent of carbon by just 1%, on an acre, an increase of 1% a year, which would be achievable, 0.41. If you do that, the land can hold 18,000 gallons more water per acre, just by having a little more carbon. And that just came from putting a cover crop, or leaving the residue, or intensely grazing the animals, and then moving them off for a long time, and then bringing chickens in next, and then moving them off, and then bringing in other things, and eventually bringing them back. There's new intense ways of doing this, and you end up with that difference. How about this difference? That's the same place in Africa, hammered by wildlife. This was before Alan Savory started. This was after. He was shooting elephants, reducing the numbers for decades. And it wasn't working. Somehow he stumbled upon the concept that if you mob graze, that is, if you intensely herd graze an area, and then those animals move on for long enough, the place goes haywire with life. But if you pick at it slowly, slowly, all year long, and the grazing pressure at any given time isn't too intense, then it doesn't do well. And it ends up losing and losing and losing. But Alan went in, he overgrazed, in some people's mind, an area for a long time in Zimbabwe, and that's what he came up with. He's famous worldwide. He would be a wonderful member of this club. He's of that genre. He's Alan Savory. He's a genius. And he's changing African lands as well as our own rangelands around the world and in New Zealand. All these grass-fed beef farmers are starting to understand how to do this. And it turns out if you do it, you end up storing a bunch of that carbon dioxide from the air underground. And it's really quite convenient to put it there. It reverses climate change. So all of this happens from carbon farming. And there's countries other than ours that are really committed to this. In France, they've made a commitment called the per 1,000. It's really 0.4% increase in carbon. That's their goal. They just want to increase the carbon in their soil 0.4% a year. If they could do that, the French government will give them a tax credit in the form of like a carbon trading thing. So they're actually storing the carbon underground, they're improving the level, and the government is giving them a little reward for that. And of course, somebody else is out there polluting in exchange for that, but that works. So there's 26 other countries that have signed on at least. It's called carbon farming or soil carbon sequestration, and it's done with regenerative ag. And today, it's the only thing that I know that can not only stop hurting climate change problems or making them worse, but it can actually reverse those problems. And that's the positive message I want you to remember when you see in your child's or your grandchild's house that organic food. Again, they're wasting tons of money on that organic food. How could they waste all that? Again, well, was that organic gum? Oh my gosh. When they're doing that, it's actually helping to improve our world. It might actually save your great-grandchildren's hide. It might save their hide if we can encourage enough organic farming and put it back in the ground. Okay? And if we can come up with another solution instead, I guess that's good, but there are no other solutions. That's why France and all those countries started to commit. That's why Vermont is considering a regenerative agriculture bill. That's why I was in Hartford last Thursday giving testimony on defining the definition of regenerative ag and establishing what the right amount of carbon is in topsoil you might buy. I was also testifying on Thursday saying that we should stop spraying synthetic herbicides on the state highways. All sorts of things go on in Connecticut, NOFA, in the capitals, on the farms, in the schools. So there's lots of ways to do this, and I can teach a farmer, I can teach a gardener. What you should know is that the organic world is helping everybody, and that no chemicals is good because it's helping the critters. We want the soil critters to survive. So just think about keeping the land covered with green plants, and keep shopping as locally as you can. And if you're taking care of your lawn or you have a service, refer the service to us, ask them to follow our standards, or to inform you when they can't. And that's okay, all right, as long as you know that they're not following the standards. If you're looking for a service to do something, of course, we have the website to plug in your town and you'll get the list of people who understand us. If you're trying to find those farms, you're going to look for our farm guide, the Connecticut NOFA Food and Farm Guide. And we run classes for people of all ages, whether they're farmers or backyard gardeners. This year is our 35th annual winter conference. Mrs. Smith, you might remember, the winter conference has been going on for so many decades, and it's an amazing thing. I'm sorry, it's not a potluck anymore. After 350 people, they decided the potluck was unmanageable. It's now at about 850 people. I might bring back the potluck, we'll see. But we do our annual conference. It's coming up in March. And it's a nice way to get excited for the growing season. You might consider buying something for your sons or daughters, a ticket to the conference. It could be good, and the children are free. But it's basically 45 workshops, a keynote speaker on food justice, and an incredible lunch sourced from Connecticut farms. A lot of it would be organic, all local. And we're out there pounding the street all day long, just trying to promote the good word for organic farming, organic food, and organic land care. So I appreciate you listening to my explanation of what organics is, and organic agriculture, and carbon, and non-chemical lawn care. And I welcome any questions you may have. So thank you very much.
We've got a few minutes for questions, if anyone.
I have plenty of time. Yes, sir.
I see the term green plants.
Green plants, yes.
Are there good and bad green plants? Is a weed a good green plant?
Yeah, so weed's a good green plant. Weeds are actually very important, and they're kind of like the first thing to fill in the bare dirt and heal the land. A weed is only a weed if it's in the wrong place. And really, dandelion has a deep taproot. It's not just because it doesn't want to be pulled out. It's actually mining incredibly important nutrients from 6 or 12 or 10, deep in the soil. Nutrients your plant roots will never reach. Trust me, you're only using like the top, less than the foot at most. So they have long tap roots and they bring it up. Weeds have their role in healing the land. Yes.
You're good.
Yeah, weeds are great. Weeds plural. Yes, sir. This guy has a microphone.
I have the mic, I have the power.
I got a mic too, so.
Oh, do you? We'll go at it. If you have 2 acres of beans,
If you have 2 acres of
beans or
Beans.
whatever, and one you treat organically, one you treat chemically to increase the output, make sure the pests are killed, what's the cost difference for the organic over the chemical?
Well, the cost difference is challenging to answer in a way, but what we often see in organic agriculture is people not spending on seed, they're saving their seed. And they're not spending on chemicals to fix problems, because they tend to not have as many problems. When the big institutes went to research this, and the United Nations decided, what should we do? Should we listen to those crazy Greenpeacers about this farming in the woods concept? Or should we, go with the big, factory ag? What's the right thing to do? And the United Nations and Rodale Institute and the USDA had all studied it for many years. And the UN has concluded in 2013, the only way to feed the world sustainably is through small-scale organic operations, not even large-scale organic. Okay? And it's because over time, your cost will be less. The soil starts to take off and starts to take care of itself. You don't have the pest problems. And you try to buy the chemicals. It's not to solve the problems, it's actually to try to solve the problems. Okay?
But isn't the problem that if I'm an individual farmer, you can convince me, but most of our farms are owned by corporations, and I want the money in quarters. To me, that is the issue that you need to overcome with this.
So what we've seen is the organic farming market has been more profitable than the chemical farming market. That's what we're seeing. The organic farming market ends up making more money over time. That's what we're seeing. After 30 years of a chemical farm, you'll end up with challenged soil. After 30 years of an organic farm, people will be begging to use the soil. So there's a long-term effect.
So our property is sprayed for ticks regularly, and there's 2 questions. And then there's mosquito sprays as well, like contains malathion. Could you comment on that, please?
Sure. Well, when you're spraying for something in general, even if it's a pyrethrin that's supposedly based on chrysanthemums, it's a synthetic, it's very dangerous. So if you're going to spray for ticks, if you have to, I would say you should look at cedar oil and nothing but cedar oil. You could maybe even take cedar chips, and spread them around the perimeter of your areas that are sensitive, especially like playgrounds. You should be more aware. You should not be sitting and hanging out on stone walls because they have cracks and crevices that stay moist and the mice live there, the wet-footed mice live in the walls. Therefore, ticks are on stone walls. Remember that when you're hiking. Okay. So if you're spraying even cedar oil, which is the least troublesome, it's natural, you're hitting all these interesting spiders, a lot of biodiversity is going down, and then you're going to have an open field for, well, who's going to survive? You might do okay lowering the ticks. I understand the problem. I've been bitten many times. I know that it's a challenge that some people get disabled from Lyme disease. I don't underestimate it, but I'd say only use cedar oil and use it when you need it. And don't forget that there's practices too, like wood chipped areas. Keep it drier in an area if you're going to be there. Moist, not so good. Ticks crawl up grass about 2 feet up. They love it there. So when you walk by. Yes, sir.
I noticed.
Oh, he didn't. Did I answer? That was about ticks and you said the mosquito spray is really quite challenging as well. I'd say you can spray and you won't get the mosquitoes. You can spray and you won't get the mosquitoes. You will still have them and you will still have your disease. What you'll need to do is to be extraordinarily vigilant, just like with ticks. You gotta watch your body, you gotta watch yourself, you gotta act smart, and you don't have cocktail parties on the back patio in open air at 5:30. Have them inside in the AC. And invite me.
I noticed too, going back my church time, building the ground, that we did not use any chemical spraying where any of the children from nursery school would walk or track it. Is that a state law or is that just one that we put in?
We were able to pass an incredibly important bill that for kindergarten through 8th graders in Connecticut, there's no synthetic chemicals allowed to be used on the grounds at all. In New York, it's K to 12. This goes for schools, it also goes for parklands, playgrounds, things like that. So the children have a little protection. Do all the workers know that? Do you know that? When we're using our chemicals, there's a lot of mistakes. So there's some protection for kids, but worry not. They just go on the sports field that's, heavily treated. Let them go on the synthetic sports field, the AstroTurf, where they can inhale VOC, volatile organic compounds, and benzene and toluene, and well, whatever you want, including black carbon nanotubes, which are a new ingredient in car tires. Car tires, which they use as an infill for the fake sports fields. Mind you, the car tires, you have to pay a fee to get rid of them. That's because they're hazardous waste. Well, we were getting mountains of those tires in the 70s, and the EPA met with all the state agencies, and they came up with solutions. Some of them were grinding them and selling them for garden mulch. Others were grinding them and selling them for sports field infill. Others were burning them for tires to waste. The constraints on any of those solutions, well, for these sports fields, the constraints on grinding them and putting them in sports fields were health concerns. The actual stated solution was enlist cheerleaders to promote product. I'm not joking. That was in Connecticut. And that was with the head of the Rubber Association, the EPA, the Connecticut Deep, trying to come up with a solution to a problem, mountains of tires. But they shred them and they put them on your child's sports field where they respirate heavily, they inhale VOCs, they come out of the, it's terrible. Are you guys going to endorse a sports field made out of fake rubber? Are you? If you want to, check the science first. Sorry, there was some hands, Mr. Joe.
As we're coming up to spring, let me go back to the lawn issue that you raised earlier. What's the best technique to reintroduce the nutrients in grass clippings and minimize the use of fertilizers or other chemicals on your lawn?
Sure. The short course in lawn care really is get out to the mower, raise the wheels, raise the deck up as high as I think it can go, unless you got a really special one with extra clearance, but mostly all the way up. Do your fresh mow for the spring, mow everything in. If you have a bagger on that mower, you must remove that bagger. Just mow. Even if it's a little higher, leave a little clippings. If it's really clumpy and cakey, you gotta rake it out, move some of the clumps. But in general, you're never gonna have a disaster amount of clumps unless it was a foot high. So you mow it all in, no bagger. No bagger, because that will take 80% of the nitrogen out of your lawn. So, raise the blade, skip the bag, will increase the blade of grass, which increases the depth of the root, which avoids drought and finds more nutrients. It's kind of a mirror. It kind of has an equal amount of root underground as above ground. Then when the August heat comes, and you're like, wow, my lawn, it's brown, it should go brown, just like us. We should like age. It's naturally, the only thing is that they perk back up. We tend not to perk back up so much. They go into dormancy in August. They will come out. Brown lawn is not dead usually, okay? It's really just not dead. It will come out, so don't overwater. Let it get through. September 1st is when you're going to spend your money on seed, not in the spring. Forget Easter. Only in Easter, those times when you got your grass, it's looking nice. Oh, but there's a bald spot, seed there. Patch the hole, but invest in a whole seeding only for the last weeks of August, September 1st. That will then take hold in the fall. It will grow well. So those are some tips. When the leaves come, don't pay the guys to rake. Tell the guys to go and mow. Just go mow. Mow the leaves in. Keep it going. And if it's super duper duper heavy, okay, fine. Move the leaves to the side of the yard and use them. Throw them under your shrubs. Mulch with leaves. You get 4,000 pounds of leaves per acre. Use them. They're very important. Does that help to answer your long, short course? And you really, if you want to think nutrient, you gotta just take a soil test and send it to UConn. It's intimidating, just because you gotta get out there and like dig and put it in an envelope and put your name, and you're not sure if you're doing it right, but doing a soil test will just really help you if you have any lawn challenge. Any other question? Mr. Ryder. Just one more.
Some farmers claim that the higher crop yields with fertilized farms is necessary to feed the world. Is that true?
No. We've researched, and in the last 10 years, we've gotten the results of 2 decades of research. We've done side-by-side trials, organic and chemical, at Rodale Institute, all over the world. It's turning out that we can feed the world better with organic agriculture, and we'll build the soils while we do it. It is not necessary to invest in genetic engineering or genetic modification technologies either, when you could just simply invest in breeding programs to improve your stock. So I know he mentioned this was kind of my last question, and it's now noon, but if you wanted me to say something briefly about genetic GMOs versus other, it's very confusing. It's very confusing stuff. This GE and GMO is not breeding like we were breeding in the 60s, 70s, coming up with really cool crosses that are disease resistant. They're even kind of like strange. You know, those organic people, we'd rather have, you know, the organic, open pollinated varieties, right? But no, they got some varieties and they crossed them specifically to see what would happen, and they bred out those hybrids. Some of them reproduced, some of them didn't. Anyways, there's that type of breeding. Then there's the organic breeding, which is supernatural. That's just letting things interact. Nature will show you what succeeds. Genetic engineering is so different because it's not taking 2 things and coming up with a new creature. It's taking like a bacterial DNA and putting it into a plant DNA, which doesn't happen in evolution. And it's changing something within the DNA structure. Even if it's a good technology with a solution, it's not studied enough. Because when you put genes into other genes, the results up and down the gene are not adequately studied. So even if you wanted to shoot and root for GMOs, guess what? The game's not good enough with rules. They don't know how to study it. In fact, they do know how to study it, but they're not required to. The generally recognized as safe, GRAS, policy at the USDA says, if you invent a GMO corn, if it literally looks like corn, it must be corn, no further testing required, grass, generally recognized as safe. You're the guinea pig. It's going down the line. Genetically engineered things will be useful for medicine, for many things, but starting with your food supply and not requiring adequate studies and having no intention of studying the consequences of changing that DNA, releasing it on the wind and pollen, affecting the genetic type of all the other plants out there, polluting the genes of organic fields nearby with no regard, in fact, with spite. Genetic engineering is not a good neighbor. It's not studied well, and it's not even needed, because we could do all this other organic agriculture. We could do open pollinated breeding. We could come up with other ways of improving the world's food supply. In fact, it was only the chemical industries and the last century that we had less plant varieties and less choice. We've lost hundreds of strains of your favorite varieties of squashes and tomatoes and thises and that's and the unique varieties. We've lost them because the industry focused on few. They invented synthetic nutrients to feed the plant directly. They didn't sell you much to feed the soil organisms so that they can feed the plants too. So it's a complicated topic, but I hope that starts to point to the fact that it's not studied enough, and it's also unnecessary for feeding the future. So thank you for listening.